They did once a long time in life.
I'm a fan.
So it's interesting that you bring that up. So that's how we kind of mislead and misguide, and we miss the mark when it comes to evangelizing and engaging people, because we mimicked what we saw, and we saw so many people take a dogmatic approach when they have the word in their hands, and when it comes to engaging people that may not look like them and act like them. And so I'm not skipping over the truth, because the truth and they need to know the truth. You in sin, and that's so what did Jesus do? Is that what he did when he walked up to people that were not like him?
Good question. Good question. We're gonna let some people part out too. Mm-hmm. Good question. Good question. So I have this little thing in my head where I believe that as long as you are being, you don't really have to prove much of anything.
You don't.
Which means you have to live. You don't have to defend, you don't have to prove, you literally just live. Mm-hmm. According to godly principles, just live. You don't have to skip over the truth when you're living the truth. You're not even obligated to even call out the truth in someone else if you're living it.
Right.
Because your life will call those things out. And it's interesting that we had gone through this whole culture of they're hating on me, right? If you're living like something, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Are you the one who have to acknowledge it?
You realize Christ never acknowledged at any point in the Bible that they talk about him and they this, and that. It was literally, you would only know that was coming from someone else's perspective. Christ literally just was. He just walked as he
lived it. Yeah. Just lived it. So, in a work group, a group of people who are not used to me had this little side conversation. Like, man, there's no way in the world that he talks like that all the time. There's no way in the world that he's always happy, optimistic, and even the suits, like, it has to be a cover-up for something. So when this makes it to me, I don't feel like I have to acknowledge anything. Mm-hmm. What am I gonna say? Like, you guys, you gotta believe me.
How dare you?
Really?
You know who I am?
Right. Like, what am I really gonna say? You know, nothing about that offended me. Mm-hmm. Nothing about that. One, because another truth that I acknowledge is there are some people who believe that their truth is the truth.
Mm. Right.
And if your truth has to be called out aside from what's already true, chances are there's an altered truth somewhere. Yes. And your truth may not be the truth. I don't have to prove that I am who I am. I've lived long enough. Yes. I am very consistent enough so that anytime that comes, now the crazy thing is they don't really know me. Can you imagine if Sierra walked in the room and they're talking about, no, he got to be fake.
Right.
Sierra knows who I am. She doesn't even have to defend me. All she has to say is, I'm around him a lot and I hadn't seen anything change. You know how that turns the table? Now, here's where I'm going with that. Christ did not skip over the truth that he was, or he is, the walking creator of godly miracles. Hmm. Is that not the truth? He didn't have to go everywhere singing his own praises. What he did was lived according to who God called him to be. Mm-hmm. And when it was time for him to do the work, he was capable of doing it. Because he wasn't worried about people who were hating on him.
Right.
He wasn't worried about people who were talking about him and trying to see what was fake and see if he's doing magic, where the quarter come from, how it get behind the ear. Who cares? He produced all the time. When you know the truth, it is easy for you to create an atmosphere of grace.
Yes.
It's easy. So the next is, though I've gotten this information, what am I really going to do with it? Live. Because so what if someone thought that I was fake? Like the voice, the clothes, like now granted, fake clothes, now come on here. Like how do you, a fake suit? Like, how do you come up with this? So what's in my head is the only thing I have to do here is
Yes.
Because there's something about me that stood out that says that there is a difference. And now when I start making the difference in your life, there's no more question. Your questions have already come out. You've already had that. And this is where grace comes from. I'm not going to chastise you because you had an opinion. I'm going to live this thing out so that when God begins to do the work, he's pleased to do it with me being a part of it. Because unfortunately, we have too many people that are trying to prove themselves and they go outside of the will of God for their lives so that when God starts doing the work, you can no longer be a part of it because you brought shame to the work. Okay, saints. Okay, you think someone needs to be laid out. Why do you have to do it? Why do you have to straighten everybody out? Bishop Coates was like, God didn't make you a straightening comb. He made you a witness. Like, so he was like, why you got to be the one to straighten everybody out? But real talk. So are you willing to not extend grace because you want to straighten people and know the truth about you? That's not how Christ lived.
It's interesting. And, as you were sitting there explaining that, I was thinking about when, again, New Testament, Peter was, he was at a point of, what I want to say, a frustration. Because he said, so many people say that you're of Apollos, and some say that you're of Paul. And Jesus said, well, who do you say that I am? And it's interesting because based on people's limited experience, whether it be with Christ, whether it be with us, when they initially engaged Christ, they saw him as just a random person. And then some people begin to say he's a prophet. But then when God allowed them to have a vision and an experience.
Oh, that's good.
And so instead of us trying to harry God and his way of revealing what he's doing through us for other people, instead of allowing that opportunity to manifest itself in its time.
That's
because when you mess around and you live, see, when they saw you, they initially engaged you as that fake person.
That's good.
And then when they learned you to be the fake person, then they treated you as such. But then when they saw that you still operated in a place of grace, and then when they needed to experience grace for what it was, and now they have a true experience, they now understand that I had him wrongly labeled because I never really truly got to experience him because I misplaced and misunderstood. And so now when we allow God to do the work,
I used to get annoyed where all the time just singing, Lord, whatever you're doing in this season, don't do it without me. It's like we had to run that song out completely. I really did. I just felt like we ran, and Bishop Morton did a good job ministering that song. He really did. However, I really felt like we just were running that song out. However, I feel as if I do not want God to do a work in my city and I not be a part of it.
Right.
I want to live to where God doesn't have to take me out of the equation to get the work done. And unfortunately, and with some church cultures embracing a dogmatic approach, sometimes God does have to remove that portion of the church or that display of the church before he starts doing the work, because they have already shown that there's no grace there. He is grace and he is truth. And us acknowledging that grace is also an atmosphere of acceptance. If we do not if we do not share grace or display grace, that means that we no longer have room to accept. And to me, that's a problem. That's a problem because we're here to be city changers. And how can we be city changers and we're not accepting the city? You can't change what you don't accept. You have to accept the truth that, you know what, this is raggedy, but I'm going to put my best foot forward. And I'm going to make sure that this raggedy work then becomes quality work. If the city's trash, then guess what? It's trash because you hadn't put the work in. If there's a dark cloud over the city, the dark cloud stayed because you refused to be a city changer. These things, the church has control over. It's not until we embrace being a city changer that God would use us to change things that we may not know much about, but at least we're willing to be used in these atmospheres to show forth Christ. So we and on this slide, let's go to the church's retaliation, or excuse me, the church's relation to the world. On one extreme, we withdraw from the world as the church as much as possible. We're set aside. We're not part of that. And we reject every word. You know, we used to do it with cars and stuff. You don't need that car to go to church. It used to be a thing. And then we embraced it. Now you need the car to go to church. Like you don't need to shine your car on Saturdays for Sunday. And there was a whole culture of that. You saw all the saints at the car wash on or the driveway wet on Saturdays for Sunday morning stroll, right? Come on, man. At one, there's always an extreme that we would draw ourselves from looking like the world, from being a part of the world, that we miss an opportunity to change the world. The other extreme would be we're so willing to surrender and compromise that you can't tell the church from the world. We, as a group or body of believers, have to be able to take a stand and be firm in that stance, which means we also have to identify the truth of what we are doing as a unit, what we're doing as a body. Because we're city changers, right? And for us, we know that we're exalting Christ, equipping believers, and engaging the world through ministry, translating the word. We know that we're doing this, right? However, we also have to acknowledge that we are taking a very unique and a current day stance to get this done. The work is going to be completed, but we have some things that we have to now acknowledge. We have to acknowledge that we have been categorized, and not just by ourselves. We have been categorized. The church overall has now been categorized. There's a protesting church. Let's go to that slide. Now, I gotta laugh at some of this stuff.
Right.
Because some of the stuff is hilarious. The protesting church. These are the Christians who believe the world is an evil place and needs to be challenged. They give public protest, and they're the hallmarks of this approach, this protesting church, right? Tell me, Pastor Boo, standing outside of Walmart. No, you know what? Let's do this. I saw right here. I saw right here in Virginia Beach. Oh, we're in Tennessee, right? Yes. I live in Virginia Beach. I was driving in Virginia Beach. In the summertime, there were people standing outside of a fur store with signs telling people not to wear fur coats. Granted, so this is the protesting approach, right? This is the protesting approach. They're standing outside of a fur store where they're selling real fur. standing outside of a first store in the summertime, telling people that they shouldn't wear fur. We're killing animals and ... right?
Mm-hmm.
Signs all over the place. In my head, I'm like, first of all, it's summertime. Why are we focusing on people wearing and buying fur coats? And it's 102 degrees outside. But I realized that that's another display of the church. Sometimes our seasons are off. We have to allow God to speak to us in Revelation often.
Come on.
Because something that seemed like it would have a practical answer, sometimes it really is a spiritual awakening. And if they didn't do that for anybody, I don't care if one person never went back home and donated it to charity. I don't know what they do with stuff like that. I'm not donating mine. But I realized in that moment, they were used for God to speak to me. Sometimes our seasons are off for the approach that we're taking. And if we're going to be ready and relevant, it's one thing to be ready, but if your readiness cannot take place in the right season, you are not relevant to the cause. So you're hyped up, you're ready, right? You're hyped up, you got all the tools. Oh, I can pray the house down. Maybe this evangelism on another level. When we go out to the street, you're not going to be able to pray for first timers in tongues.
No.
They need to hear. You need to be in season. Because that's not the season for tongues. That's not the season for you to lay hands on them. You might not be able to touch their forehead. You might have to ask them, can I hold your hands while we pray? You might not be able to prophesy to them in the moment. Every prophecy you have might have to come out in prayer. You might not be able to say, I see this happening in your house, but in prayer, you can say, God, protect their house from this. But understanding the season. Because we're ready to do some things, and sometimes we're ready to do it because we want to be seen. Sometimes we're ready to do it because we want people to think we have power. That's what I got from the protesting church. What do you think about this, Pastor B? And then take a third bullet.
Yes. So I like the idea that you use the word ready. But I like to use the word want. Because when you're ready, that means readiness has been met. That means things are in place. You know, we want to put on a show. We want to be the anointed. It's like, again, we're going through cheese. A lot of people who want to be cheese. I don't need a bunch of wannabes. And so the church is in need of real workers who are willing to do the work. Because when you're willing, you're ready. But y'all got a whole bunch of people who want to be anointed, who want to be seen, who want to be all of these things.
It's crazy.
And the problem with that, it lands us in this situation. Like, you know, Christians who believe the world is an evil place, and we got like during election season, as we're getting into the, you know, midterms, and people talking about evangelical Christians, and they talk about it like it's a bad thing. Like, but how did we get such a negative stain? Because we want to run and be Christians when we want to contradict or bring light to things that we disagree with. And so this last bullet, it says, consequently, many people outside church come to believe that Christians all about what they hate and who they condemn. And that's what wannabes get wrapped up in. People who want to be like Christ, but if you just go ahead and be like him, take up your cross daily, you'll find out that if you just embrace those who don't look like you, you'll be doing his word.
Sir, I almost screamed, and I still had coffee in my mouth. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How about that?
Right there.
Drop the mic. How about that? Woo! It's important, Pastor, that we do not focus on things that we hate or focus on condemnation? Why is it important that we do not become the protest?
The first thing is that if we become the protesting church, then what happens is we become the repelling church. And then we become a complete contradiction of what he told us to be. He told us that if we lift him up, he'll draw all men. So if we're constantly protesting, we all remember the protests and the riots of 2020. Was anybody running to the flames and all the chaos? No, we were running from that. And so if we're taking a protesting approach to things, then nobody's coming nowhere near here. Because they claim to be the hospital, but it seemed like they start throwing sticks and stones and fire when I come around there. So if I'm already broken, why am I gonna go there to get broke some more?
More.
That's a funeral home over there.
Oh, jeez.
The Undertaker's in there.
I now want to talk about the absent church. Let's go to the next slide.
Oh Lord.
The absent church. I didn't make these categories up. Reading from Alan Platt's book. And I support what's on these slides. I support the teachings of these things. I do. That's the reason why we're having this study to talk about what it takes to be a city changer. I definitely support this book. The absent church. The absent church seeks to isolate itself and avoid the mainstream environment. The absent church choose to not roll up their sleeves and work in the streets and alleys. The absent church keep their beliefs to themselves, as was the world. The absent church.
You can just take away the word church and it'd be the exact same thing.
Just be absent.
Be absent.
Just be absent.
The missing church.
However, if we take pride in being the church, things like this, we got to own.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to take my name off of that because I am the church.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is, I'm not absent.
Right.
That's the truth. I was talking to something happened, and I was in a building, and unfortunately, a homeless woman walked in and had some questions answered. It was never acknowledged that, homeless or even the smell that came and the whole 9 yards, but there were a lot of people who were turned up, right? So afterwards, being that I had to be in this building for a little while longer, and assist, I then went to my vehicle, and I had like the air sanitizer, like the air spray there, and I got it, and I came back in the building, and when it was not offensive, I sprayed so that, we can neutralize the air a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the conversation came up when it was safe to have it, and someone responded, I think that, unfortunately, we in America, we tend to demonize homeless people instead of set up enough programs to help them. And I get it. However, I did not go after the person for saying it. What I did was challenge their work. So I said, well, I don't necessarily see that America is demonizing. And the response was, well, they call the police on them because they can't be homeless here, they can't be homeless there. And I said, okay, I'm not going to say that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. However, over the years, I have volunteered my time homeless to make sure that they've had resources, because there are literally shower houses for the homeless. Mm-hmm. There are people who give lunch to the homeless every day. Mm-hmm. There are people who actually cuts the homeless hair, mm-hmm, and even wash it and style it. And I said, I have volunteered for some of these places. I've given my time to actually help. And there are resources. I said, unfortunately, I believe that in a self-righteous nation, not everyone takes the opportunity to think about the well-being of their brother and sister when they don't look like them. Because if you can't afford a pair of Gucci slides, then we can't go to the same place. That's how we live in America. I said now granted, I'm not saying this isn't so, but what gives you such a passion to speak in such a tone that would challenge me spraying the air for the health and well-being of everyone left in here? Because did we not just have to get COVID shots weeks ago?
That's where
Real stuff.
social distancing.
Do we not have to get flu shots every year? Now, granted, the homeless had access to COVID shots, and they get free flu shots. Who's to say that they always have the opportunity to take advantage of it? So in coming in here and such, why not take care of the environment? Because it's offensive to do so. This is where I'm going with this. In being absent, we take offense with every little thing that goes on in the world because we don't have the energy to be a part of solution. My challenge to this person was not necessarily that your theory is wrong. Now, granted, I believe that the theory was a little wrong. I get what you're saying overall, but your blanket statement has no works. And when you're absent from the work, you're absent from the solution. The absent church, why is it important that we not be absent?
You know, as I saw that, and again, thinking of thinking about this something as simple as the standard family, and we quickly make relation to when the father is absent and how there's an imbalance in how the family structure is executed and how children are raised. Well, it goes without question that people will say the world right now as it stands is imbalanced. Perhaps there's an element that is absent. So just like you think about certain parts of your body, when if your right leg decides to take absent, you're going to overwork that left one. Eventually going to fall because you're not designed to be imbalanced. So it's important that all aspects of your body is in place. So if the church decides to be absent because we seem to find it safe coming in here and doing our routine because we have a few folks who are faithful and sow their seed and we're able to keep the lights and the air on in here, and we can all sing down heaven and have a good time in here because that's what we tend to do. We tend to add to the absence of the church in our society. And then if we continue to choose to only roll up our sleeves when we clean the toilet in the building, but the folks that we literally drove past to come here, we won't engage them. And then I'm only willing to testify when I'm testifying to people who already know what he's done.
Listen,
The Bible will come by the word of our testimony and the blood of the Lamb. But how are we overcoming the world when we're only sharing with people who heard our same testimony 3-4 weeks ago because we thought they forgot about it, so we had to remind them again.
that's funny because we want a good dance.
Because that's what we do in here. Because when we went to the club, that's what we was looking for, was a good dance. So we really didn't change our mindset. We just came to another place because we feel a little better dancing in here because we smell a little better.
And I'm okay with it.
Neutralize the air.
Neutralize the air. This statement right here, and this, I would love for us to, I would love to hear feedback here. Consequently, although we have millions of Christians serving in secular society, our presence almost has no impact. And we're talking about the absent church here.
Yes.
The ones who, I'm gonna keep my religion to myself because I don't want to offend my neighbor. I'm talking about the ones who are like, you know what? if my church is not doing it, then it just shouldn't be done. So I'm not going to donate no $2 to this cause. Like I'm the absent church, right? We have so many people with this mindset that my belief is personal. My worship is personal. We'll get to that. I almost took a whole turn. We have a lot of people who act on this in a way that your personal beliefs is not impacting the world. In Christ's mission, if we're staying to ourselves, because inside this building, how much evangelism can we really do with just us? It's not going to work. We don't serve as a fraction of the community. We need to get to the point where we are. Although we are millions, there are millions of Christians serving in secular society, corporate America, business owners, private sector of the work field. We are government. There are believers everywhere. Why is our presence causing no impact? Talk to me.
It's almost like being a sleeper agent. You know, you're there, you know what you have to do, you have your assignment, and we have you here until it's time to wake you up, and then you do the work. But instead of waking up to do the work, you see what it is, and you're like, I'm 5 more minutes. You know, hit the alarm clock, snooze button one more. I know you need me to do this, but you don't see how bad it is over there. And so for the millions of Christians and why our presence is felt, it goes back to the bigger picture. If our picture all shows as a community, we're meant to impact and influence the community, change the city. But when you look at the big picture, it shows just a city full of wickedness and like Nineveh. Oh man, no, I can't do that. No, whoa. Hey, you know, we step back. We literally remove ourselves from the bigger picture. When that's not even, we just do what we're told to do. And so at the end of the picture, you know, there's a clean city. But to get to that cleanness, somebody's got to do the work. Somebody's got to roll the sleeves up. But if we all, you know, recluse back and hide off in our little, you know, sections of a church where it's comfortable, basically getting back to that comfort zone, which even outside of religion, you know what the comfort zone can do to you. You know, you stay in your comfort zone too long, you're bound to fall flat. You're bound to fall flat.
I like it. The absent church causes us to have no impact. What good is it for me to see a situation? I can pray for myself though, right? I can pray that God gives me $1 million. The truth is, the reason why some of us do not have the 1 million is because we keep it selves. God gives to people who believe in the plan, because he always wants his work to have some kind of fruit, right? He always wants multiplication. Believers, I know everything in math, anything times 1 is 1, is that number, right? Yes. Anything times 1 is that number. The believer is the only one who gets to get one gift, multiply it, and make greater impact. Because you know what he does? As a believer, we get compounded, right? I have a gift. I share with Pastor Boo. Now, some people might just say that's adding, right? Mm-hmm. But this is how God works, because remember, our thoughts are not his, right? Mm-hmm. So what he does is, now that one gift that I had shared with Pastor Bowie, we now have a gift. That's 2 gifts, right? And now the 2 of us are going out into the community, and we're sharing. This is what a gift of grace. This is the gift of God. This is the gift of having an impact on your city. This is what God has called us to do. And that leads us to our next slide. We have to aim to be the cultural church. And I'm not talking about a church where all of us here decides that we're not all shaving our heads and we're not all wearing locks. It's just not going to happen. I'm talking about a cultural church where culture is not our skin color. I'm talking about a cultural church where culture is not our income, our household income. I'm talking about a culture of grace where we are a church that makes room for people to be accepted for who they are. We're also making room so that those that we have accepted for who they are have room to grow and be who God has called them to be. So the cultural church does indeed engage society. However, we are indistinguishable from the world, which means I can go places and I am okay that I am not necessarily of that culture because I come in the name of the Lord. It's the reason why some of us can actually go to Fridays and eat at the bar and not be ashamed that we're eating at a bar. There are some believers that can't be seen at the bar, and I totally get it. I've experienced this, for real. I've actually been at the bar with the pastor and had literally, we just ate at the bar because there were no more seats available. But someone definitely acknowledged that we were at the bar at Fridays. Is there anything to defend? No. And this is where I'm going with that. In Fridays, though I wanted a table or booth, being that they engaged their patrons, there was not a seat, so they offered me where there was room. Not room for you over here. However, we have room for you here. Why can't the church pick up that concept? We understand that the life that you're living, of course, may cause you an early grave. We might not be able to service that in the capacity that you want us to. You got the funeral here. Why not? Why? True stuff. True stuff. Not pick up the concept that when you come in here, no matter what you look like, there's room for you. Because the truth of the matter is, a couple weeks ago, we had so many people in the sanctuary that I literally had in my head, if someone else walked in the door, I'm gonna have to literally tell them to sit in my chair. A couple weeks ago, it was crazy in here. We had children all over the place. We had visitors. However, it was only 2 visitors and everybody else was family. And I literally said in my head, I'm standing up anyway. Why not give them my chair? A culture of acceptance. Because the most important person in the room is honestly not the pastor.
Wow.
And when you are a part of a cultural church where their culture is grace, an atmosphere of acceptance, we know how to protect the gifts, but also not put the gift on the pedestal where when he comes down, it's almost inhumane.
So culture is like presence then. The present church, or as I say in some of the prayers, as we leave this place, but not your presence. That's like the same thing as saying the culture, the environment that was set before us in the spirit that we all feel and connect upon. Because just how we look like you, we still have the same initial vibrational feeling, the same spiritual, we're all on one accord in that sense. So it's like the actual present church. It's like the church that that's how I kind of caught on to it.
I like it. And spot on for sure. We have to be relevant in these walls and outside of here. We can't be city changers without it.
So again, kind of tying the previous 2 illustrations of the church, because we spent so much time in protest, and in our protest we retreated and became absent, that we developed a culture of not acceptance. We developed a culture of not understanding how to demonstrate grace, because in our attempts to be safe and in our attempts to uphold the truth, we became unfamiliar with grace.
Good stuff.
And so as we endeavored to be a cultural church, we became a cult and lost our ability to be identified as the church. But we know that the church is his bride. And so we know that we are the church because we understand where we are in the world, and we're able to engage the world through ministry. We're able to have influence and effect in the way that the culture functions. And then we do have a biblical world view.
We do.
And we ain't just talking about Jesus wept and all and everything, although there was a reason why he did.
Right. The pet Bible verse is make my enemies my footstool. And I was glad when they said
to me
the pet verses that makes you feel good. The cultural church can be dangerous.
It can be.
Because the cultural church in the aspect of and what we don't want to become in that aspect is very much we come in here and become copycats.
Oh.
And if you don't testify like
come on. And if you don't run in place when you got a word in your message,
you ain't preaching like pastor preaching.
Just had to do that real quick.
Yes, sir.
Yes. But that's why we're not that. You don't have to do that.
Amen.
But if that's your personality, we look forward to it.
Amen.
Holla.
Because because understanding grace means that you understand that there's a culture of acceptance when it comes to pleasing God.
Yes.
And we don't want to be a cultural church that only please ourselves. And that's what it looks like. Now, what does it look like if we come in here wearing $500 in clothes every week and we still can't put a sandwich on someone's table? It's an empty plate because you want to look good, right? But where's the work? Because we're engaging the world through ministry, not a microphone. Ministry translated to work. But unfortunately, that's become ministry. We don't want to be the church that we have to be city changers.
Yes.
Unfortunately, people come here and change, right?
Right.
We come here. We don't want to be nothing at home. We don't want to take on leadership at work.
Come on,
but we want to come to church and be the prophet of the house.
Oh my goodness.
We want to come to church and we want to be the greatest evangelist. We're evangelizing people that are already saved.
Right. And that's
we want to come here and lay hands on people who have authority and power to pray for themselves. What is that? That is a culture of repetition. That is a culture that breeds no good work.
yes.
And unfortunately, it's worked for some people. But you know who it doesn't work for? It doesn't work for a city that has to be changed.
Right.
Yes.
Because being cultural, you continuously please yourself.
Yes.
Let me go get those eyeglasses because Pastor Bowie is rocking Prada. Now, if I want to be anointed, I got to rock Prada. Pastor Bowie has a Lincoln. If I want to be anointed, to ride up in a Lincoln. Pastor Bowie has a work van decked out. So if I want to be like Pastor Bowie, I need to have two vehicles. I need to have one that makes me money and the other one I need to be so fly that everybody just know this right? That's not a cultural church.
And then the cultural church breeds and builds up. It breeds up a sense of bigotry amongst people because now they're doing something that they believe, even though it's just following patterns to the point where, like you said, you'll go home Monday through Saturday and won't do nothing for their lives besides that most maybe look at the Bible. But then they come to church on Sunday morning, they want to lead the praise team and take everybody and carry on. It's like, wait a minute, hold on now. It's
So interesting thing, the cultural church. We talk about when Jesus even walked the earth. Anyway, so Jesus walked the earth, and he had various ones that knew what the Bible said, knew what the Word said, knew what the church was supposed to do, but they didn't know him. They did not know him. And so all of these churches, the protesting church, the cultural church, are all bunches of people who have a form of godliness, but they deny the very power thereof because they don't know him. Imagine if we fashioned ourselves after him, because everywhere he went, change happened. Every person he encountered, there was a change. They even wrote a song about it. Tamala redid it from.
She did. She did. She sang it too. She sang it. She sang it. I'll say this because next week we have a word fitly spoken.
Yes.
And during that time, we're gonna continue to talk about being city changers. Next week we're gonna talk about the church that we want to be. We're going to talk about the kind that can change the very culture of the city that it's in. That's what we're going to talk about next week. And don't get me wrong, we are not dogging out the church. We are acknowledging the truth of these categories that have been sculpted out to identify certain bodies, certain within the church. If we do not acknowledge the truth of where we are, we cannot change where someone else is. Mm-hmm. And if we don't accept the things that we know is a part of the church's history, repent for them, own them, and repent for them, there's no way God is going to use us to change the city that we're in. Mm-hmm. The only thing we're doing is buying a piece of property to hide in. Why do we want to be hidden in that aspect? It's counterproductive. What has he called you to do? It's surely not hide. Next week, we're going to talk about the church that we want to be. We're going to talk about the church that is profitable to the city for change. That's what we're going to talk about next week.
Hallelujah. So thank God for our Bible study on tonight. We want to thank God for our pastor for allowing us this opportunity to do this in a very, very different fashion. I think I'm digging this whole podcast thing. Then we got to get us a makeup crew so our faces look like on TV.
I know, right? Just be out here, just
for you. Yeah,
all like this.
I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm here.
we're gonna be there in a minute. That's what's coming.
But I don't want all that baby powder on me.
We look at all the casket ready. But I want to thank God for this. I believe it's very healthy. I think it actually allows for us to have deliberate and engageful conversation. It's a different kind of way of learning, and it allows us to explore more about what he's trying to show us and everything. I think even now more than ever, it is definitely making us ready and relevant in this season. I think we are definitely that motley group of people who have moved on from just coming in the building out of routine and then championing things that have not been profitable to the church. He's given us the gift of the desire and the ability to evangelize a city. And what good is that if we're just going to lock it up in here? Mm-hmm. So as we continue to endeavor to be a hub for city changers, let us continue to be focused and take these things on board and make application with these things. Let's not hear it and get us a few nuggets in and maybe get a little shine. But let us go and application with these things. And then as we sit and we reflect over where we are in our lives, where we work at, the positions that we've had or that we have, and positions that we're about to embark upon. Think it not strange that you are in that particular predicament, because like in our various illustrations, we are that church that we're not going to be absent, and we're going to be relevant, and
Yes, sir.
and we're going to acknowledge why he has us in these positions, because there's someone that is supposed to be impacted by our faith.
Yes,
And
sir.
we want to thank God for
Yes, sir.
the opportunity for tonight. And with that, we're not going to prolong the time. All hearts and minds are clear.
That's the one.
E-family still with us right now. E-family, again, I want to thank you all too. Y'all got to
Absolutely. We love you, family.
charge it to my head and not my heart. I'm looking at a camera that's sitting there looking at me, but I don't see y'all on the screen. But y'all are there. God bless you. We want to thank you for tuning in with us on tonight.
Yeah.
And we want to thank God for your patience with us. I know we tend to clown a little bit.
True.
That's just me. If you don't like it, pray for me. he may bring forth a change. But with that, we want everybody to join in and with all hearts and minds be clear. God, we thank you for allowing us once again the opportunity to come before you in prayer on tonight, God. We thank you for allowing us to be able to just discuss candidly and talk amongst ourselves these things that are in endeavoring us to be city changers in this time and in this season, God. God, each and every one of us knows that there are areas in our lives, whether it be professional, personal, family, in our neighborhoods, that you deliberately and strategically placed us there for such a time as this, that we are able to impact the lives of people that we come in contact with. God, let us not protest the things that may be contrary to us. Let us not become absent, God, and let us be mindful that we are demonstrating a culture of grace in this season, God. God, we want to ask now that as we continue to endeavor to be a city changer, a church that champions city change, and God, allow us to grow, God, within ourselves, that the change that is happening in our lives is transformed and transferred into the people that we're able to engage, that they might be able to experience change in their lives, God. So as they become affected, God, we see the ultimate change in the city, God. God, we thank you for allowing us to be this little church over here in Chesapeake in this strategic location, God, because it's right now that you have us here. And it's a season of change that you're about to bring forth, God. God, we thank you for our pastor and his obedience to following the will that you've given to him, God. Allow us to be able to continue to support him, God, and allow us to support him as he continues to remain faithful unto you. God, each and every person that's associated with Faith Impact, God, I speak a blessing over each and every life that's represented here, God. And God, as we leave this place on tonight, God, I ask you to be with each and every one of us, God. God, as we pray on tonight, God,